everybody. Good evening and welcome. Today is a very special stream with a very special guest, the one and only Gabrielle Toth.
Hi.
So, for those of you who don't know, Gabrielle is someone I interviewed and did a whole two-part thing with called Breaking Free, the story of untold story of Scientology in Canada. She used to be the executive director of the Church of Scientology of Vancouver, and we did an extensive interview that was about 5 hours, and I cut it down to 1 hour and I think 40 minutes overall interview that was released. I am going to at some point release the whole 5 hours, but that's later. But Gabrielle was the executive director of Vancouver org, and she now has a channel called Escaping the Cultiverse A, which I love. And the plan was that we were going to launch the channel as soon as that interview dropped, but we've had to put a pause on the channel for now. So I thought, while we're doing that, let's get you on for a live. We can tell everyone what's happened and where you are in the world and what's going on. And then we can move on to the topic of today, which is personal boundaries and how Scientology fosters abuse. So, Gabrielle, welcome.
Hi. Thanks, Alex. That was fun. Thanks for the intro. So we had the interview, and I actually should thank everybody because all the responses that I got were like completely positive. I was blown away. I was crying while I was reading some of the messages. It was such a warm welcome. And I did like a very short little welcome video as well. And I did some setup. And then my husband and I decided that we're going to pick up and move from BC, British Columbia. I don't know if you guys know Canada very well, but basically we're moving from one end of the country almost to the other end of the country because my husband has family out there, and we just want to be closer to family. And so everything was put on hold, and because I'm half packed and yeah, there's just a lot to do when it comes to buying and selling. And I bought a house in Ontario virtually. I've never ever done that before. So that was kind of crazy.
That's very brave of you.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of used to doing crazy stuff. I mean, I was in a cult for 25 years. So this was actually not that crazy.
I can imagine. So, I think, I agree. Our interview was fantastic. And one of the reasons I edited it down was because I was so moved by your story and it was so interesting that I wanted to do it justice and make a bit of an impact with it. So we will be releasing the full 5-part. I was thinking maybe we can release the full interview when you're ready to launch your channel, and we can do that because we go into so many different rabbit holes that weren't covered in the edited version that people might be interested in. So we can figure that out. But for now, this should be streaming, if we've set it up right, on my channel, Apostate Alex, and on Gabrielle's channel, Escaping the Cultiverse A. So if you're watching on my channel, go over to Escaping the Cultiverse A and give Gabrielle a little subscribe and a little like button, and you can watch the stream from her channel too. And we can see all the live chat from both channels on that side for us, on the right hand side. So we'll be pulling up questions and things. We'll do Q&A at the end. Do we want to get into the topic? Let's just jump straight in.
Oh yeah, come on, let's just dive in.
So this all came about from a conversation Gabrielle and I had the other day about what can we talk about on live so that we've got content. And you were kind of saying, I'm itching to like talk about this. I'm watching these lives. And it was around the time of the Danny Masterson case and this whole story of, abuse and manipulation that happens in Scientology. And it is such a key topic. What happened with Danny Masterson is obviously horrible and terrible and shouldn't have happened. But the shocking thing for me is it didn't surprise me. And that's what's worrying, because these things happen in Scientology across the globe, not just with celebrities and not just in LA and not just in the Sea Organization. These things happen across the world. And so Gabrielle and I are going to talk today about how, with her experience in the Vancouver org and my experience in London, how Scientology itself may not be, Scientology doesn't teach people to go and, abuse people, but it allows that to happen just in itself, right?
There go the dogs. Sorry.
I can hear. We love the dogs. We love the dogs.
I've got two. Anyways,
do you want to bring them on camera? Does everyone want to see the dogs?
Hang on.
Let's have a dog moment.
Come here. Hey guys. Okay, I'll bring one at a time. Come here, Tron. Oh.
Guys, let me know in the comments as well if our sound levels are okay. I'm using a different mic to normal, so let me know if I need to up it or decrease it or whatever.
Okay, this one's my rescue. He's Charlie.
Hi, Charlie.
He's the ankle biter. Hey, Charlie, are you growling? That's Charlie. Yeah, he's got behavioral issues. He was my little security blanket when we got out, and then here's Merlin. Charlie, that's Merlin.
Oh,
he's actually an ex staff member as well. He used to come to the org with me.
Oh, I love
and
that.
And everybody loved him. Yeah. He was the star of the show. He would sit in my office and bark at anybody that would come in. Very
sweet. Do you want to actually, this might be a good opportunity because a lot of people watching this may not have seen our interview that we did. Do you want to very briefly give a bit of a summation of who you are, what you did in Scientology so that people are up to date that maybe haven't seen our video?
Sure. So I got into Scientology through a family friend in 1989. And not too long after, about maybe a year or so of doing some services, I ended up on staff and going to Los Angeles to do some training. And then I came back and eventually that led to being the executive director for the Vancouver Foundation organization. So I did that for a bit and hated every minute of it. And then I actually left for a little bit and then got dragged back on staff. I was still a Scientologist the whole time. And in the end, I ended up in what's called the Hubbard Communications Office. That's the Personnel, Ethics, Justice, and Communications Division. And it was from there that I got really, really sick, and then had an interesting conversation with my husband, who was already out of Scientology, unbeknownst to me, 2 years prior to me getting out. And then, he basically, Charlie, come. Sorry. He came, he told me the story about the Debbie Cook letter. I read it and instantly made the decision to leave the organization, which was interesting because it was the very first time I even had an inkling of leaving Scientology altogether. Prior to that, the thought never even entered my mind. That's the prison of belief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I think... Yeah, go on.
Oh, so that was around, I left staff at around 2013 because I was so sick. I had what was called Graves' disease. It's a hyperthyroid disease. It's actually an autoimmune disease. So I was off staff, and then I guess 2014 is when the epiphany occurred. And and then since then I have not stepped foot into an organization.
Wow. And I think what's interesting about your story, which if you want to know Gabriel's story, go and check out the interview that we did. We go into depth about everything. And Gabriel has some great experience understanding from an executive level, you know, the head of the church in Vancouver, the top level, and experience in HCO, Hub Communication Office, which is, as Gabriel said, kind of like the HR department, getting ethics in. And you saw a lot during your time on staff, and you have a very good, thorough understanding of how
Mm-hmm.
Scientology works and how it's applied. In our interview, you talk about your time at LA training as part of a big program. So yeah, your experience is interesting. I think that's why it'd be good to talk on this topic particularly. Scientology, when we talk about allows abuse, what I mean, I mentioned this on an interview I did with the Degraded Daughters of Dianetics, Vanessa and Alicia, who are awesome. Go and check them out if you haven't already. Give them a sub. So we were talking about the Danny Marston case and how the TRs, for example, training routines, bull baiting.
Mm-hmm.
The idea behind them is it allows you to confront reality and deal with any situation and think rationally rather than reacting with your reactive mind. So bull baiting, a lot of people will already be aware, but just so those of you who don't know what it is you sit down and someone has to hurl abuse at you, like shout things at you and, you know, do whatever they can to get you to react. You have to sit there and not react whatsoever. And the idea is that you can confront anything. But what this does do is it creates an environment where someone who, for example, might want to touch someone inappropriately or do something that is inappropriate, it allows that to happen. Scientology doesn't say to do that, but if you are that sort of person, it's a perfect opportunity. And there are countless stories around the world of these sorts of things happening. And this is what I mean in Scientology. It fosters this culture of abuse. It doesn't mean every single Scientologist does this, but it allows these things to happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of instances where I've seen that kind of thing. It also allows for a lot of verbal abuse, which is what I experienced directly while I was on staff. That was just commonplace, being invalidated, criticized, because it's just yeah, it's that kind of environment. It's always more is expected, and it's never good enough. Your stats can always be further up. You know what I mean? Um, and you know, it's human nature. People have issues, no matter where they are in Scientology or not. And Scientology's approach in handling these kind of things is really, really messed up. Um, and it's never it, the decision is, or the way it's handled is always in the direction to protect the organization. It never deals with the individual's issues, right? I mean, yeah, what
Yeah.
else can you say about that?
I mean, this is the thing. Scientology is built and marketed in a way that sounds positive and empowering, but actually, if you look at it, if you take a step back, you realize that's not necessarily the case. Prime example. The teaching is you are a thetan, you're a spiritual being, you're immortal, you have more ability, power, control than you can ever imagine. You have godlike powers, and you just need to unlock them, which all sounds very promising and very empowering. You go, oh, okay, great. Scientology is going to help me become a better person spiritually.
Yeah.
However, on the flip side, when something happens, like the Danny Masterson thing, or someone is, is a victim of some sort of terrible action or behavior, well, because you, as a spiritual being, are more powerful and in control than you can imagine, well, then why did you subconsciously put yourself in the situation where you allowed that to happen to you?
Mm-hmm.
It makes you the reason, like as a victim, that something happened to you, that you're the problem, which is obviously horrible. So
Mhm.
it's the teaching is meant to be positive and empowering, but actually in practice, that's not the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. Just to add to what you're saying, it gives you a false sense of godliness, or a false sense of being an authority, or it actually sort of brings about an elitist type of attitude. At least that's my experience. um, and it's also which then you think you can get away with stuff. I which I've seen. I have personal experience with that. I mean, being in an authoritative role, because it actually it's depending on who you are. I think I'm a very strong personality, and when you give somebody that much power, they're going to take it. I took it. And I think, for instance, in the Danny Masterson case, the guy probably thinks he's frickin' invincible, right? Nothing can happen to him. He got away with it all. People are sort of pushing him up on that pedestal all the time, and because you surround yourself by people who just do that. So it just that's, I think, where Scientology breeds or brings out that kind of personality in somebody, if it already exists there. I mean, it's not everybody, right, that does that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But Scientology, it's in keeping Scientology working, which is the most important policy in Scientology. It's the beginning of every single course you ever do, apart from the life improvement courses. But anyway, that's a whole tangent. It says, if in summation, right, Scientology works 100% of the time when applied correctly, right? And you have to
Yeah.
apply it correctly. And when you do that, it will work. And there is no room for it not. If it's not working, it's because it's not been applied correctly. Scientology
Mhm.
itself is 100% correct. And it's the only way of saving humanity, clearing the planet, and reaching your spiritual goals and so on. So when you have that mindset that this thing you're doing is 100% the only way to help people on a spiritual level in a way that nothing else on planet Earth does, well, that empowers you. It makes you think, I'm doing something important here, and therefore everything else doesn't really matter. With Danny Masterson or anyone else in that sort of
Mhm.
circumstance, if you get pulled up for doing something wrong, your mindset is very likely going to be, well, look, they don't know what they're talking about because they think they're doing the right thing, but actually they're not. They don't even know. Scientology is the answer, and look how stupid they are for pulling me up on doing this thing and thinking it's wrong when
Mhm.
I'm doing this really important mission with Scientology. That's the mindset, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Mm,
Definitely it is. Like I said, it has that elitist type of, or fosters an elitist type of attitude,
mm,
right? Because when you're a Scientologist, you know you have all the technology to solve all of mankind's troubles. When you have those kind of tools in your back pocket, I mean, it just suddenly came to my mind, like when Tom Cruise did that, when that video leaked of him
yeah,
talking about Scientologists and how he can shatter suppression, and
yeah,
anyways, I I remember watching that, and I remember cringing, because that his attitude was exactly how so many Scientologists think, that they're just, un, you can't destroy them. They handle everything. And I have to admit, I had that attitude too. It's like, you're invincible, right? You are the elite. You can do no wrong. And yeah, and Scientology is gonna take over the world.
yeah, yeah, precisely. And this is, again, it sounds like it's a good thing in principle at the beginning, because you think, well, I've got the power to make a change here, to make a difference, do something important with
Mm-hmm.
my life, which is great. But the
Yeah.
negative is it goes to the extreme and makes you think, well, fuck everyone else. They don't know what they're doing. I'm more
Mm-hmm.
important. And it fuels that ego, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about actual Scientology techniques and so on, we mentioned bull baiting and TRs earlier. What was your experience like doing the TRs and bull baiting? And what did you see anything in the academy that now looking back, is
Yeah.
something that shouldn't have really happened?
Yeah. So when I was my first sort of taste of TRs was at the local organization here in Vancouver, and it was pretty mild. There was, when you did the bull bait, you did some teasing. I was fairly new, so it was awkward in my opinion. I felt weird doing it, especially when you have to yell at a ashtray. There's a that to me was really weird. I mean, sitting there and taking some abuse from somebody and not, reacting, was like, yeah, okay. I didn't like it. I found it uncomfortable. And my first reaction when it got kind of ugly was just to punch the guy, but I never did. I just had that urge. It's like,
You didn't.
because no, I didn't punch. I didn't deck the guy, but I tell you, I really wanted to, because
Yeah.
that's, it's just like, knock it off kind of thing. So
Mhm.
that was the mild version. But then when I got to LA, and there you have in the course room, it was like a practical course room where you did all the TRs. um, there was guys who were doing the more professional TRs, uh, and they were basically on the auditor training, so they were preparing to be auditors. So the the sort of gradient on those TRs were a bit higher than what I was doing, but um, I got twinned up or sort of partnered together with a guy who was doing the professional or the auditor TRs. And we're doing he's like really insulting me and calling me some really nasty names, and I ended up telling him to F off. And I got in a lot of trouble because you're just not supposed to do that. But I am, like, I've only been in Scientology at that point for about a year and a half, and you're not really exposed to a lot, and it was still kind of pretty foreign to me. So, but anyways, but it was in that time that my exposure to this kind of way of being with somebody, or this way of treating somebody for the sake of training, it introduced us an environment, or yeah, that's all I can really think of, an environment where it's kind of okay to do that kind of stuff, under the circumstances. um but I mean, it was still, I found it abusive, and I reacted negatively, so it was really hard for me to sit there and take it,
Mm.
let me tell you.
And this is one thing I want to get across, is sharing these stories and these things. Firstly, that's, I'm really sorry that happened to you, and that's horrible.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that is unfortunately common, that a lot, if not all of us former Scientologists have this shared experience, because this is what happens, right? And what you're
Yeah.
told when you're reacting negatively and going, I don't like this, I don't like this is abusive, or this is horrible, and someone's shouting at me, is they go, the only way out is the way through, right? You have to,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be difficult, it's going to be hard, because this isn't an easy journey. We're not just talking about, like learning a new skill, like how to paint or something. Like, this is your spiritual freedom here. It's not an easy journey, it's going to be hard, but the more you do it, the you push through, the better you are. You're going to be able to handle it, you're going to be able to be in a better place afterwards. So you kind of go, okay, I guess, all right. And you take it, and
Yeah.
you end up in a place where you just take it and take it and take it. What was your
Well, you
mind
can't
going through?
finish the course, Alex. You can't finish
Yeah.
the course until you pass, until
But
you don't react anymore.
so what was stopping you? Because this is a question that I get a lot when we talk about these sorts
Right.
of things from
Yeah.
non-Scientologists is, why didn't you at that point just stand up and walk out and leave and go, I don't like this, they're abusing me?
Um, well, first of all, I was in Los Angeles when I was doing it, and I live in Canada. And I believe at the time you did have to turn in your passport. And I was there for a purpose, to get trained as an executive. So this was just sort of, you know, I never really thought about it that much, to be honest with you. Like looking back now, thinking, why did I take it? It was like, well, everybody else was.
Yeah.
This is just what you do on your journey to becoming an executive. you know I mean, I can't imagine what like these real professional auditors must have gone through. Like it was
Mhm.
like Claire Headley, she was fair. I know she was fairly highly trained. And so the abuse she must have endured along the way must have been horrendous. I've
Yeah.
seen what other people go through, who, I've observed it, what other people go through on the professional TR's course, and it's horrendous. I don't think I could have done it.
Mhm.
That's just me, though.
And they lose the idea of context, right? Because what they'll do is they'll go, yeah, it was horrible, but look, you passed, you got a certificate, you got a commendation, so it was worth it, right? Look, now
Yeah,
you're doing really well, you're in an executive position, right? You're getting this
yeah,
recognition, your stats are up, so it was worth it, right? And you kind of
right,
go, okay, yeah, so it must have been worth it, because if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have got the commendation, I wouldn't have got the post, I wouldn't
right.
have become an executive. But you're not thinking about it with the context of, well, if I wasn't in Scientology at all, I could still be successful and be an executive in a business, and I wouldn't have to go through this and
Right.
go, you lose that sense of context because you're just thinking the only way out is the way through, and you have to
Yeah,
just, it's not an easy journey, you've just got to keep going,
yeah.
and it will
And
get
you,
better.
exactly. And you are reminded of this, because I remember just throwing up my hands and going, this is bullshit. I can't do this. And you're coaxed into it. This is okay. You're going to get through this. And it's just the way it is. You think, this is what I have to go through. No pain, no gain kind of attitude, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so and the like, you are encouraged by other people, but I tell you, there's stuff that goes on there where somebody's like unbuttoning your shirt, or spreading your legs open and making some comments about stuff down there, and it's just like, I'm like gonna really hurt you if you keep this up. And it's like, flunk. It's like, oh great, okay. So then you just learn to desensitize, right? You learn to just sort of push it all down. Otherwise, you will not get through the course and you can't move on.
Mm-hmm. And you're learning, you've got in the back of your mind as well that the purpose of the course is to think rationally. And if you're getting angry, which is completely the acceptable
Yeah,
and right way to feel when someone is doing that to
exactly.
you,
Yeah,
but that is taught in Scientology to be a reaction, and therefore it's fueled by the reactive mind rather than thinking rationally. So
yeah,
you have to confront this and do it and carry on, so that if you are put in a situation where someone does that, you're not going to hit them. You're going to rationally know how to deal with the situation. But the rational way to
yeah.
deal with the situation like that is probably to hit them. But that's not what they say in
Right.
Scientology. But
No,
um,
no.
you mentioned earlier the idea of everyone keeps telling you it's okay, and there's this element of peer pressure, right?
Oh, yeah.
You have a story that I think you wanted to tell about when you were in HCO and you were aware of someone doing something and there was an element of peer pressure that you had to fight back against. Do you want to perhaps talk about that story?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is years after that, after going on training and stuff. So I was exposed to a lot of stuff in between. I mean, I spent 25 years in Scientology, most of those on staff. And then when I ended up in the Hubbard Communications office, the, you get to know all the stuff, the real dirty stuff and yucky stuff that happens, and you are depended on to clean it up or protect the organization from, other determinism, is how it's said, right? So usually what happens is somebody will have what's called an HCO confessional. So it's a security check. I just have to add this. Aaron Smith Levin had Mary Kahn on the other day, and she talked about these so-called interrogations, and she got a little bit deeper into them. Most of my stuff that I did in Scientology, I had a lot of interrogation, and it's very very stressful, and yeah, you're really ripped apart inside and out, kind of thing, and you're having to answer a lot of very very personal questions over and over again of stuff you would never even dream of. So anyways, just so, I mean, you sort of get the idea. Here's this person who is just finished this whole confessional. I mean, and it can take hours upon hours to finish these confessionals, and then all you wanted to say something?
I was just going to ask for context. What would be a reason that someone might have to do one of these? I think just to explain to the audience that why would someone need to do a confessional like
Okay.
this?
There's various circumstances. Maybe a situation has come up where there's an unethical issue. Let's say they're compulsively doing something unacceptable with perhaps children, or it's also determined by the case supervisor. I don't know if you want to. The case supervisor is in charge of the person's auditing, and they basically direct the auditor on what to do with this person. So a lot of times, and it just seemed like it was more often than not, people would get these HCO confessionals. So they'd be finished that, and then all these knowledge reports would be written up on everything, every little thing that they have uttered in this session, every little transgression. So then they have to come up, and then they have to do a handling. So they have to fix whatever it is going on. And a lot of times there were people that there was some really personal stuff, masturbation, for instance, that other things that had to do with children on the internet, and that was really really hard. And in this one instant, it was a staff member who had confessed to incidents that happened with two smaller family members. And it was probably the first time I have encountered anything like this. And it was really shocking to me. However, you have to put your feelings aside and deal with this individual in front of you. And I mean, my first reaction was, he was like on staff, and there's kids around in an organization all the time. I mean, even my nephew's son was around, and I just thought, this guy has got to go. So, and it was also something that was determined from the Department of Special Affairs. There was a lady in there called Sharon. Oh, I really want to say her name because she's a nasty, nasty piece of work. But anyways, I will protect her as I shouldn't. So yes. Anyways, these are the people that protect the nastiness. They protect the organ. They cover up all the stuff, right? That's why I have
So
such a. Uh,
yeah,
Go ahead.
OSA, the Office of Special Affairs, is the dirty tricks department of Scientology that
Mm-hmm.
deals with its PR, its public image, all of its outreach programs like Narcanon, Crimenon, the Truth About Drugs, all of this stuff is all a PR game. But also they deal with any suppressive
Legal.
people like you and I. They deal with anything legal, like you just said. They deal with any threat to Scientology's image. They're the protectors of Scientology's public image. So Mike Rinder was famously the head of OSA. And then OSA is this big international organization, then has sort of people in positions to represent them in every single city level org. So there'll be a
Yeah.
director of special affairs in every org. There was one in London called Mark Pynchon. I've named him before. He's out there publicly talking about Scientology, so I don't mind naming him. But he was in charge of all that sort of stuff in the org. And if any attacks come on Scientology, it's their job to deal with it, whether that be engaging press to write stories about the person to discredit them, or hiring private investigators, or whatever, as per the policy in Scientology that Oren Hubbard wrote.
Yeah. So this particular lady, her name is Sharon Werner.
You did it.
Oh,
There we
that
go.
gave me great satisfaction, let me tell you. Well, she had a cohort as well who she took over from, but so the order was from DSA to somehow contain this guy. And I was like, and basically get him off stuff. 1 second. Hey guys.
And the reason, just while you're doing that for the viewers, the reason OSA get involved at this point is because this is something someone's confessed to in a private, priest penitent privileged conversation with their church. It's a confessional. But OSA get involved because it's something that could be a threat to Scientology.
Yeah.
If you confess to abusing someone or doing something like Danny Masterson did in your auditing session, OSA needs to know about it, because if that information gets out there at all, then that could damage Scientology's reputation and image. So OSA get instantly informed of anything like this that comes up in any confessional or session or whatever, so that they can take control and try and handle the situation to stop it spreading and make sure it doesn't get out to the public.
Yeah, in this case, I should tell you sort of the sequence. So the information went from the auditor to the senior case supervisor in the organization, and then it went up to the Department of Special Affairs. And she like dicked around with this thing forever, but I already got the information in writing. So I knew what was going on, and I was like, okay, this guy needs to go. So I already sort of was getting the ball rolling on it, and then I suddenly ran into some opposition. This guy was in the public division, so he was actually the bookseller. He had actually your post,
Director of Public
and
Book Sales. Wow.
yeah. And
which is one of the most, well, not one of the most important jobs, but it is it is kind of one of the most important jobs in
it is a very important post.
There's a policy that says Scientology expansion happens because of book sales, right? Selling books is what is going to create growth in Scientology, which is what you're trying to do. So book sales and the public division of Scientology is super, super important. There's a whole order of like how to fill up an organization, like with, as you're recruiting staff, which posts are more important than others.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to hire, someone who I don't know whose job it is to polish all the brass in the building before you hire a bookseller, because booksellers are more important. So it's like
Yeah.
there's an order, and Division 6, which is the public division, and book sales is one of the most important things, one of the first posts to fill up. So this guy had an important job, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and he was actually very good at it. He yeah. Anyways, I don't want to really get into him, but so I'm like preparing all the paperwork to dismiss this guy, cuz he was in a position where he could be easily dismissed, didn't require any sort of justice action, instead of getting all into all the staff status stuff. So, and then my sister, who was the head of that area, heard about this, or I actually had to tell her. She got very upset about it, and then her senior also got very upset about it, and we're trying to plead his case to me that he's a wonderful bookseller, and he does his job very well, and he is so important to the organization, and he's so needed and so valuable. And I was just like, are you freaking kidding me? You know? Anyways, I did manage to dismiss him. After I left, I found out they got him back into the organization. I was like, I cannot believe this. I mean, this is nuts, because even the DSA said he needs to go, but for some reason they became very complacent about it. My hunch is it was just desperate measures, right? Because there's very few staff. The staff were dwindling and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so there they were, and he could have actually been charged very easily if somebody were to spill the beans, right?
Yeah.
um and that was just one case. Like, there was quite a few with other things. There's these are compulsions people have. um I don't I don't want to be judgy about this kind of stuff. It's gross and it's illegal. But in the Church of Scientology, people get away with it. They are handled with Scientology technology, and they're good to go. Just give us your money, and pay for lots of auditing, and it's all good. Nothing to
Yeah.
see here, people.
There's a really good comment in the chat that I'm not going to pull up because it has a word on it that the algorithm
Oh,
doesn't like, but I'll read it. It says, it's from Donna. It says, important job or not, a person who is a serial offender, they need to leave. He may do a good job, but let's say, abuser is an
yeah,
abuser, right? She used a different word
yeah,
for it. It's in the chat if you want to see it, but it's so true.
yeah,
And in Scientology, there's two things at play here with this story. One is the fact that Scientology is shrinking. There's not many of them left. There's an estimated 30,000, 35,000 in the world, and that's a generous estimate. So orgs like Vancouver are grasping or sort of clasping, sorry, for staff. They're trying to find staff that they anywhere and everywhere that they can, and they're trying to keep the staff that they've got. And somewhere along the line, the judgment would have had to have been made. What does more damage to Scientology? This guy and his story of what he did leaking out to the press and potentially causing a bad image for Scientology, or us not having a bookseller? And obviously, after you left, the decision ultimately was, no, we need him regardless of what he's done. It's more important to sell books because we need to expand and grow Scientology. And yeah, he might have done what he did, but let's just not look at that. Let's pretend that didn't happen, because the important thing here is getting Scientology out there. And that's just horrific. And it couples in with the second thing that's in play here is ethics protection. I've talked about this on videos before. In
exactly.
Scientology ethics, the idea is if your stats are up, if you're producing, if you're getting people into Scientology, you're doing a good job, then you have protection. And the policy is any reports written about you get filed with a yawn. Like they're just glanced at and put in a folder and no action is taken because you're upstat. And again, that's something that sounds good. You know, if you are doing really well in your job, then yeah, if you make a minor mistake here, it's probably good to just overlook a minor mistake and carry on. Whereas if you're keeping on making lots of minor mistakes, ultimately, maybe you should do some training or whatever. But when applied in Scientology, it's to the extreme. It's like this guy has done horrific things to children. And because he's upstat, they go, we'll just overlook it because he's producing, which is horrible.
Yeah. It was reported, just in case anybody wanted to know, after we got out, I got together with somebody else and they actually did report it. Nothing comes of it. Nothing came of it. I mean, you have to have all the evidence, right? You have to reporting, sort of that kind of thing without any backup is very difficult to get anything. I mean, really, what should have happened, in my opinion, is the DSA gets this information and they should be like, okay, so you need to go to the police and you need to basically spill the beans. There actually was, a long time ago, things were a little bit different, where there was somebody who confessed to something and they were told to go and turn themselves in. But
wow.
you see, and he actually went to jail. But there's no standard thing. It's just like, in this case, it was better to lose this guy for good because he was just a public. He wasn't a staff member. It was best for him to just go and turn himself in, and
And
we're done with
also
him.
interesting that the church didn't report it. They told him to go and
Oh, of
report it,
course.
right?
Right.
This is a question that came up earlier. Where is it? So Melanie, in cases of children being involved, don't you have to mandatorily report that? This is an interesting topic that's been talked about previously, and I don't know the legalities of whether they do actually have to report these things mandatorily. However, Scientologists certainly believe that they don't. And they don't report these things because it's, again, against policy. It is a high crime in Scientology to sue another Scientologist, to report another Scientologist to law enforcement. So you're not going to do it. So the church have heard about this horrible thing that this guy's done, and they've gone, okay, you need to go and tell the police, and bye, we don't want anything to do with you. They didn't go, we've heard this information, we're going to report it, and you should also go and report it. Like,
No.
that's how it should happen, right?
Exactly. That never, ever, ever was an option, ever. Because, first of all, it wasn't my job to do that. If I were to go and report something like that, I would have been expelled.
Yeah.
I would probably be declared. So, yeah, I mean, I've never ever heard of an instance where any church member, any church staff member has gone to the police to report anything, ever.
And this is the thing, like the Danny Masterson case, for example, is one example of, I'm sure, many instances of these things happening globally at every level of Scientology, because it is Scientology policy to not report things to law enforcement. Also, Scientologists look at law enforcement as lower than them or not important, because Scientology ethics is how the planet should be run, and that's
Right.
how you get real justice. And law
Yeah.
enforcement, they'll use it to their advantage where necessary. They'll pay them big checks and get them to look at them favorably and try and pay them off and so on, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we're supporting the police and so on. But their actual belief in their head is that, you know, the justice system in legal terms is not doing a good enough job, and Scientology ethics is the real way how
Yeah.
justice should be handled.
If I can just add to that, the attitude is also that WOG law and WOG justice does not rehabilitate the individual. only auditing and ethics handling, etc., will actually salvage that being.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah, because
So then, why would you? Why would you report anything? Because he's in your care. You're entrusted to look after this person and bring him to spiritual awareness about this stuff.
yeah,
Meanwhile, I'm going, oh my God, like, get this guy out of here. Mind you, he creeped me out from the very beginning. I actually hired him because,
wow,
of course, I'm an HCO, so I'm in charge of recruiting and personnel. So I did initially hire him, and then I fired him, or at least I tried to, anyways. But yeah, you get into, in the position that I was in, you get into a lot of moral struggles and stuff. Because, I mean, thank God I still kept some of my morality or my non-Scientology views on things. Like, for me, that's where you draw the line. Funny enough, it wasn't much longer after that I actually left, where I got very sick. And yeah, there was just a tremendous amount of stress that, not even not as from outside, but also from within. The you have to make these moral decisions, and people's lives are, at stake. And you want to do the right thing. I'm a good person. I don't want anybody to be hurt. I want to do what is right. So, and that was a big struggle, and yeah, very, very stressful.
yeah. There's always this debate in Scientology, in your mind, of like, what is the right thing to do, because in one side of your brain you believe Scientology is the way to clear the planet and the way to help everyone, and it's a bit different how we currently do things in the world, but this is the real way that's going to work and save and help everyone. And then there's the
Hmm.
moral question of like, I actually don't think that that's right, that happened. And they're always conflicting about what is the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics. In Scientology,
Exactly.
that life is split up into 8 dynamics, self, family, so on, groups and whatever. And the whatever action that is best for the greatest number of dynamics is the best action to take. So if that means killing somebody or abusing somebody, if ultimately that results in the survival or growth of Scientology, then it's the right thing to do, because
Yeah.
Scientology is the best thing for all dynamics, because it addresses a spiritual plane. It addresses you as a being rather than just the physical universe. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that Scientology goes out and murders people. That's a whole nother topic and a whole nother question. But
Yeah.
that's the mindset of like, what it's a necessary evil, I suppose,
Yeah.
because you're dealing with the most important thing on earth.
Well, I mean, in my experience, working with people and doing um, ethics programs, I guess you call them, if the answer was not benefiting the organization, then it was wrong. If they chose, like, for instance, when you do a doubt condition, you have to choose between two groups. If this guy chose to go and party with his buddies or stay with his wife, who's antagonist to Scientology, that was the wrong decision. So everything is manipulated in order to protect the organization and defend the organization, and yeah, and to make sure nothing ever happened that was out PR.
Yeah, it's all
So
about
you
that
don't you
image.
yeah,
Yeah,
you can't win unless you toe the party line. That's how it goes.
yeah,
Yeah.
precisely.
It's very communistic, actually.
It is. It's totalitarian and it's
Yep.
coercive and it's manipulative. But the thing is, you don't realize it at the time. Like you're not sat there as a Scientologist thinking this is really totalitarian, blah, blah, blah. You're thinking, no, Owen Hubbard is right. This is correct and it's horrible, but I've got to do it and I've got to do this because
Yeah.
this ultimately, the reason we are suffering in life and the reason everyone on this planet isn't clear and doing well and so on is because Scientology isn't being applied. So actually, the more strict we are with it and the more intense we are and the more we like really hammer it home, the more likely we are to actually have a better society, which is just
Yeah.
ridiculous because you're controlling people but saying it's freedom.
Yeah, and it's a catch-22 because you do, as a good Scientologist, you do your best to apply standard technology and standard administration according to what L. Ron Hubbard says, and it doesn't fucking work. So then you beat your head against a wall wondering why hasn't it worked, and it, well, because I did something wrong. It was all about, it's me, I'm wrong. So you put yourself through all this pain and agony, blaming yourself and stuff like that, and then when you get out, you go, wasn't me.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
So true.
When you're in it, it's really hard. And for me, the straw that broke the camel's back was that pretty much everything I did in that organization was more or less frowned on because I wasn't doing it right. I wasn't trained. I wasn't dedicated enough. And I spent 25 years in this organization and I gave hundreds of thousands of dollars because you're not just a staff member, you're also sort of a public, and you give money, you donate all the time, weekly. I'm doling out the money and
Yeah.
I can't afford this. But you see, you're in this this tug of war internally and externally, and it really messes with your head, especially when it comes to these kind of moral decisions like what we were talking about. Like, these guys did bad things, it's illegal, they should be going to jail, or they should be punished in the eyes of the law. Justice should be served, and it isn't, and they get away with it, right?
Yeah. I think
And it's
what I want to
disgusting.
do, yeah, I agree. And what I want to do is encourage everyone that has any knowledge of anything like this going on, whether you're a former Scientologist, a current Scientologist, even if you think it's out ethics and it's a high crime to report these things, you need to report these things if you are aware of them. However historical, however much or little evidence that you have, if you know about it, you need to report it to law enforcement, because the more reports of things like this happening, even though one thing that happened 20 years ago and there's no evidence, right, you may not be able to actually prosecute that and take it to court. The fact that it is logged with law enforcement lets them build up a bigger picture of how, hold on, this stuff is happening globally at every level of Scientology. And so if you are aware of anything like this happening, or if you were a victim or involved in any way, go and tell law enforcement, because that allows them to build up a bigger picture, which builds a stronger case,
Yeah.
against Scientology.
Yeah, and if that first person who was abused with Danny Masterson was permitted to go or encouraged to go and report that, or was accompanied by a church member to a police station and reported it, no other person would have, well, theoretically and hopefully nobody else would have had to gone through all of that. So it is so, it's so tragic. Not only did those girls, oh, that's going to make me cry, not only did they have to suffer the abuse of some prick, pardon me, but they also had to suffer the abuse from the church. It's just like it's a double, triple whammy. And I know from personal experience, the abuse you suffer in the org is just, it's horrendous. So I just cannot imagine, and my heart really goes out to those girls, and they are so, So brave. Sorry, I did think I was going to cry, but
It's
it
okay.
really, that kind of stuff really rips at you, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, we should be
And
better. We should be better people.
and you're completely right in that affecting you emotionally, because it is an
Yeah.
emotional thing. And that's one thing in Scientology that you can't do, is express emotion. If you get upset about something that happened to you, or knowing about something that happened to someone else and it's upsetting, no case on post, right? You're
Yeah,
not allowed.
exactly.
HENR, human emotion and reaction, are things that are bad. They get in the way, they stop you being productive. Like, these are all things that are suppressed. You're not allowed to feel these emotions. So,
Yeah, you
let it
shut
all out.
yourself
That's what we're here
down.
for. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
I mean, I was close to the top of the organization locally, but if I spoke up, if I said a word wrong or did something that was wrong, it was just like ruthless punishment, right? And I mean, it wasn't the physical punishment, which sometimes I would have rather done the physical because at least I could have fought back. Um, but you just keep pushing those emotions down, and soon you give up. You're like
Yeah.
apathetic. You're like, okay, if I say anything, shit's gonna hit the fan again. I'm gonna be doing lower conditions. It's like then I'm gonna have to pay money or something, or scrub the frickin' walls again till midnight or 1 o'clock, right? It was just like, it was self-preservation to just shut up.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can think of describing it.
That's exactly what it's like. And that's why it's so important to talk
Yeah.
out about these things. Should we do some questions from the comments?
Oh, go
Yeah.
for it.
So,
Yeah.
first one, Goldie, subscribe to Gabrielle, the
Oh.
former executive director of Vancouver org, our Canadian voice on the ex-Scientology scene. So, if you haven't already, escaping the cultiverse, go and give Gabrielle a subscribe, show her some love,
Oh, thank
and
you.
bear with her for creating the content. As we heard earlier, she's moving across the country, so we need to get that sorted first, and then you'll be
Yeah.
on YouTube, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I got a lot to
fantastic.
say. I'm a motor mouth.
Well, there's a lot to say, and it needs to be said.
There's
So
so much. There is
yeah,
so much, and everybody brings a different perspective, and everybody's had different experiences. So I just want to share mine. It's also very therapeutic.
yeah,
Anyways,
absolutely.
for me, I don't know about other people.
No, it's true. Talking about your experience, it helps
It
you get
is.
over it, right? Kathy Mitchell, I was shocked to find out that
Yeah.
there is a Scientology cult very close to me. I was so blind to think that it was not in my backyard. I think
Oh, yeah.
that is exactly the point we're trying to get across here, is that you may think Scientology is this crazy American thing that goes on in LA and Clearwater. No, this is worldwide. They are in pretty much every city you can think of. It might not be large, but they are definitely there. And what is happening in LA and what's happening in Clearwater is happening across the world, because Scientology policy cannot be changed. L. Ron Hubbard's words can't be adjusted or interpreted in any way. They have to be done exactly the same everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right, Kathy. They're everywhere.
Sorry, Kathy, for the bad news.
Yeah, I know. Caitlin, I don't understand how Scientologists think they are saving the planet. What makes them think these things will save anything? Gabrielle, good question.
Ooh. Well, it's the mindset. It's a slow progression into thinking that the technology and Scientology is just equipped to handle things. It has the solution to save mankind. That's what you are, for lack of a better word, brainwashed into thinking. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a little while for the most part, but yeah. And in all honesty, there is some stuff that is actually helpful.
Yeah, there has to
There,
be.
there
No
has
one.
to be. It keeps your hope alive, right?
Yeah, no one joins a cult. No one gets in a relationship with a manipulating person or an abuser, because in the beginning it all seems
Exactly.
so good, and there's got to be minor wins, otherwise you wouldn't become invested. So there's obviously bits of Scientology that do help people, whether it's a communication thing or whether it's, you know, a life improvement course on how to handle your finances, like whatever it may be. There definitely are things at the beginning that help you.
Yeah.
But the problem is with Scientology, once you get deep into it, it's 100% totalitarian. This way is the only way. There's no nuance or gray area. It's binary thinking, and that in itself is destructive. But that's the thing. Once you get sucked in, you suddenly realize without noticing, a year or so later, you believe that Scientology is 100% the only way to save humanity. And you don't realize that has happened over time until you leave, right?
Right. You know, there's some concepts that really make sense, like, you know, communication, for instance. They have some concepts that how to better communicate with somebody. You know, they have concepts of how to improve the condition in your life, like how to do better in life. These are concepts that everybody wants to have. These are tools that, who doesn't want to communicate better in a relationship,
Yeah.
or succeed better in life, or repair a broken marriage? Oh, that's another thing. The whole second dynamic marriage stuff. I went through some of that. You should note it
Yes.
down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
marriage
We'll do a video
counseling.
on that.
Crazy
That's
shit.
a whole another
Oh
topic.
yeah.
Let's do a
Yeah.
video on that soon.
Okay.
All right, Bat Goat. Thank you for talking about this, Gabrielle.
Oh, you're welcome.
Ryan asks, was this abuse in the US or Canada?
Canada. That I'm referring to is in Canada, in BC.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I'm
in
sure it's
America.
all over the place.
And in America. Yeah, it happens everywhere.
Exactly.
But what you were talking about specifically was in Canada, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Tawny Cameron, COS ethics is just plain crazy.
Plain crazy. It is. You're absolutely right.
You know,
what else can you say? It's nuts.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and the last one that I've got starred here is USA in England. I want to know more about how Canadians see Scientology. Well, before you answer this, Gabriel, I'm going to do a little marketing thing here and say this is why you should go over to Gabrielle's channel, Escaping the Cultiverse A, and give her a subscribe. She's only got one video up at the moment. She's moving house, but in time, she will have many, many videos about everything to Scientology Canadian, and this question will definitely be answered, I'm sure. So go and subscribe to Gabriel now if you haven't already. But what are your thoughts on this? How do Canadians see Scientology?
Probably the same way in which Americans see it. You know, we have quite a history. I mean, I think Scientology sort of reared its ugly head in Canada in around 1960s. You know, there was also an infiltration of the Canadian government, the RCMP, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and also the Parliament. So Scientologists were part of that whole invasion into the government as well, and they got sued actually. So,
and this is why I'm excited about your channel, because this is stuff that hasn't really been talked about much. You know, we know about the infiltration of the US government with Operation Snow White and so on, and the IRS tax exempt whole story. I don't think there are many, if any, Canadian executives talking about their story. And I'm so excited to hear all of these things come out on your channel.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I don't understand that, because there are a lot of people who have left, but maybe it's just that Canadian attitude. They don't want to make waves. They're just too polite. I'm like, screw that. I am not like that at all. That's not how I was raised. And it's probably that Hungarian blood in me that is I'm not quite 100% Canadian.
Well, hopefully hopefully in speaking out, people will see that it's okay and you can speak out and share your
Yeah.
experiences, and hopefully that will empower others and encourage others to do the same. So I think what you're doing is a real inspiring thing. I think it shows your strength. It is important, and I think that you know, all the power to you and massive respect for speaking out,
Mm.
because it's only going to encourage others to come out with their stories, which is incredible. And that's really brave of you to do.
Thank you. You know, it's funny. It doesn't feel like a brave thing. It feels like just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really does.
And there's no one standing there questioning whether it's the right thing to do or whether
Mm.
it's what you have to do because of Scientology. You know, you're actually free now to
Yeah,
do what
exactly.
you think is right, which is the way you should be.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, exactly. It actually gives you it gives me peace of mind. I can sleep at night. I don't know about that Sharon Werner chick if she can actually sleep at night.
yeah. Well,
Twice
if she's
now.
still on staff, she probably doesn't, because she's
Oh
probably
yeah.
working all the time. We've been there, right? Sleep is
Yeah.
not a thing that happens when you're
Yeah,
working
but
for
they they
Scientology.
they they patrol they patrol the internet. I've seen them do it. I've walked by the office and I've seen them on that internet, especially
Well,
when the anonymous stuff was happening. They would
maybe she's
yeah,
watching now. Who
I
knows? Hi,
hope so.
Sharon.
I hope so.
Nice to meet you, Sharon, if you're watching.
Yeah.
All
Love
right.
you not.
Gabrielle, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up here?
No, it's been fun. I mean, there's just so much more you can I can talk about just from a Canadian perspective. I mean, we don't like Canada is definitely not the US, let me tell you. But it has its stories. I think there's only around 1,700 people as of 2011. So there's probably even less now. So it's not making big splashes, which is good. And yeah, just a quick mention too that it does not have tax exemption here. It's tried and tried. And thank God some of these crazy politicians have said no thank you, we don't want to give that kind of status to Scientology. It has a bad reputation in Canada.
Yeah. I think it has a
Yeah.
bad reputation everywhere, but
Yeah. But you know, it seems like in the States there's some
it's
complacency.
protected.
It's like we don't want to screw around with this
Yeah.
whole
Because it's
religious
protected
stuff.
by the religious, the First Amendment, and they're not afforded the same protections in the Commonwealth. You know, in the UK, in Canada, there isn't that
Yeah.
constitutional privilege that they hide under. But Gabrielle, thank you so much
Okay.
for
You're
this. We will
welcome.
have to do more of this soon. You'll come on
Yeah.
again at some point. And
Sure.
as I said already, if you guys haven't already, go and subscribe to Escaping the Cult to SA, and bear with Gabrielle as she starts to upload content once she's moved house. If you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. I'll split any money that we get from that's for Gabrielle with her. And
No.
yeah, just get in touch if there's anything that you need. The Aftermath Foundation is there to help if you're trying to escape or leave Scientology. Yeah, and that's it from
Yeah.
us. Thank you
And
for tuning in.
and if you're
Yeah,
trying to get out in Canada, you can reach me. I'll help you.
absolutely. My email address is in the description of this video and every video. If you email me, I will happily forward your message on to Gabrielle. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we will see you guys very soon.